And welcome back to State and Local. I'm Anne Marie Battistone. You are watching Norfolk Public Access. This is, I believe, my last interview with the town candidates, and this woman has, I think, the most glamorous name in all of Norfolk. That would be Medora Champagne. She's running for school committee. Oh, thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, yes.
You saved the best for last.
It must be people must really remember that name.
They do. So I have to make sure I'm using it for good and not evil, I think, most of the time.
Is the first name from Greek mythology?
No. You know, it's funny. I was actually having a lovely conversation with a gentleman out in your waiting room when I got here who heard me introduce myself to the receptionist and knew where my name came from, which is the first time in my life that has ever happened to me, because it always becomes, as I was saying to him, you know, it becomes a conversation piece. He knew that he was able to give me the entire backstory of the woman and the town that I'm named after, which is in North Dakota, which is where my dad is from. And so this woman was friendly with Teddy Roosevelt when he was out there kind of finding himself in the prairie, and her husband was a socialite from New York who took all of his money and decided he was going to have refrigerated cattle transport from the plains to Chicago, and he ended up really going bust on it. But his wife was a really hot ticket named Medora, who could ride and shoot and you know, sort of really took to the prairie life out there, and they just sort of became socialites of the Badlands of North Dakota, and this town grew up.
This is vaguely familiar to me.
Yeah, the town grew up around them, and you can still go there today. There's a big the chateau they built in the middle of nowhere is still there, and there's like a Wild West review you can go to, and it's a tourist attraction now.
You know, I'm going to Google that because I still think to me it sounds Greek. It sounds like it's something from Greek mythology.
Like Medea, or you know,
well, maybe that's
according to my husband, maybe Medusa from time to time, but only in rare instances.
Now, you are an associate member on the ZBA.
I am, yes.
Because I noticed when I've been to the meetings, you haven't said anything, and so I assume that's.
Oh, you must have missed. No, we're certainly allowed to speak. Oh yeah, and question. Yeah,
you can't vote.
We can vote on certain things if the lack of our vote would impede the ability to vote. Does that make sense the way I'm describing it? So there's another.
For a quorum?
Yeah, there's another associate member as well. The younger gentleman, Devin Howe, I believe, is also an associate member, and so he's certainly ready to ask questions, and I know I've spoken in the past with them, so you just must have missed.
I've only really started going since there was all the to do with 144 Seekonk and 23 Seekonk.
Okay.
And you now tell me about your background. You are an attorney and you have a lot of clients that are veterans.
I have some clients that are veterans. I don't want to. I don't want to misstate my total client base. No, I'm primarily a disability attorney, and so that falls into a couple of different buckets within that practice area. So I help just your standard individual, you know, run-of-the-mill folks who are injured or have maybe even sustained a workplace injury. I'll help them file a claim with the appropriate state or federal agencies for certain benefits, or with an insurance carrier if it's a workplace accident for benefits like that. And then I do also have another portion of my practice where myself and some of the other attorneys in my group represent disabled veterans.
Oh, that's wonderful. Where did you go to law school?
I went to Suffolk.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I understand they do very well on the test. The Suffolk attorneys? The Suffolk grads.
They used to tell us that we had a horrible passage rate when I was in law school. I think it was a scare tactic, but no, and it's
just the opposite.
Yeah, no, we, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a one and done testing situation to pass the bar in Massachusetts. So I think they do a good job of of offering coursework that leads up to the bar exam.
I was just going to say, and more of a nuts and bolts rather than a theoretical, philosophical thing that they do at Harvard or some of these other places.
So a lot of good, mass practice, civil procedure, general federal legal concepts, things like that. I mean, I felt prepared going into the test, and it worked out. So that was great.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
How long have you lived in town?
Since '07. My husband and I moved here in, I think, it's almost been exactly 11 years. I think it was February or March of 2007.
Did you live in the West at all?
Growing up?
Yes.
No, I was raised in Cleveland. So that's, it's about as far west as, my dad's originally from North Dakota, which is where my name came from. But he left to go to college. He met my mom. They lived out here for a little while, and then they relocated to Cleveland for his work. So, I'm the only one in my family that was actually born and raised there. And now I'm the only one that doesn't live there anymore. So it's kind of a funny thing.
I student taught I went to Ohio University. I student taught in a suburb of Cleveland, which I cannot think of the name right now, but where we lived in this furnished apartment, it was on before they had cleaned up Lake Erie.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And it was absolutely concrete gray. I remember that.
Yeah,
and we're talking about a long, long time ago.
Yeah, being on Lake Erie in the wintertime, out here it gets, it's just as cold, just as snowy, but the sun comes out, and that's a huge plus relative to living kind of in that Great Lakes region out there in the wintertime. That Iron Curtain kind of comes down in November, and it's just gray for a really long time.
Now tell us, why are you interested in being on the school committee?
Well, I think that we are in an interesting position in Norfolk right now relative to growth, and with 2 kids in the school system. So I have a son who is in the 3rd grade right now, and I have a daughter who will be entering kindergarten in the fall. So we've got a lot of years left moving through the local school system. I am very vested in the quality of the education, the growth and development of the curriculum and the programs that are out there to support the various kids that are in the school system, and just making sure that we're casting an eye towards the future and staying competitive with other suburbs in the area, and preparing the kids that we have moving through our school system for great futures, and instilling in them a love of learning, and just planning and preparing for the future. I'm a big planner, and
now and I would imagine that concern's been inspired by the growth with these 40B developments that come through. And
sure, I mean there's growth that's happening regardless. I mean, if you look at the budget moving into next year, I think they're at a slightly over 4% projected increase in the budget, and that's a level services budget. We're growing even without the 40Bs. I mean, it's just a fact of life that Norfolk, being where it is, we used to be one of those far outer ring suburbs from Boston, and the way home prices have been moving up, and the suburbs that are closer in, and just the natural growth and development of a suburban area, it is definitely happening on its own. So you see some great improvements that we've made, and I know that several years ago there were a lot more fees that were associated with having your kids in the public school system. There were busing fees. Those have been eradicated. You used to have to pay for the full day kindergarten. That's been eradicated. And so we're seeing a conservative budget keeping us at a level services situation. There's growth that's happening regardless of the 40Bs. With the 40Bs coming in, my understanding is that there's a projection that in the coming years you'll see an increase of, an extra 150, 200 children coming into the school system. We have to be prepared for that. Ideally we'll be able to control some of that growth and the speed that it's going to happen with, but it's going to happen. And so making sure we can continue to have the resources to allocate for all of the students that are going to be coming into the school system, the additional teaching staff, the additional space, all of those things. Yes, it's imperative that there's planning and preparing for the future. The 40Bs play into that, but some of the natural kind of organic growth of the town plays into it as well.
Well, we have a hiatus, maybe that's not the right word, but we're in a safe zone, whatever they call that right now in terms of numbers. Isn't that right, for a year? In terms of the 10%?
Honestly, I'm not going to speak to facts of my position on the zoning board, but we currently have at this point 6 projects at various stages of authorization/completion in town. 2 or 3 years ago, I think there was 1 40B pending, and now we have 6.
Right.
So yeah, there are safeguards that are in place within the statute to allow us to control some of that growth, so that's happening. The projections for the additional students into the school system are if what we have on the table right now go through.
No, what I meant was, haven't we gotten to 10% right now in town? We've got 10%.
I don't believe so.
You don't? Oh,
no,
okay.
there's.
Somebody just told me somebody said we have right now we're at like what they call a safe harbor with.
That doesn't mean you're
numbers.
at the 10% necessarily, but it means that you have other factors in place that will allow you to slow the review and the number of applications that can be pending at a certain time. Yeah. It's kind of like a due diligence gimme for the town, where they effectively say, you're making good progress. You have, you're planning and preparing to have the right number of affordable units within the town. So there's some safety valves that we can turn on to kind of slow down some of that progress. But right now, there are some big projects that are pending in town, and however you feel about them, you have to take into account the fact that they are going to add additional kids into the school system. And from a budget management and a policy management standpoint, anyone, in town or with kids in the school system, I think we all have a vested interest in making sure that the quality of the schools, which is currently excellent, is able to maintain excellence through that growth process.
How will that be possible, though, without just a huge expenditure and a huge? I mean, I understand that there is the way the Kennedy is built. That you can add on a wing, or there's some wing. It's constructed so that some wings can be built on to add space.
Right.
And I guess I think some of that money is matched by the state when you have to expand the schools, but still, I mean, it seems with the 40B situation, it seems like you kind of, I mean, I know they had somebody come over, I missed that meeting, to talk about them, that, there's not much you can do. And they don't seem to care that the towns are going to be up against it, to bring these projects in. And so it's kind of discouraging, I think.
My position, relative to the schools would just be that, we have to use whatever resources we have available to maintain and to expand, in lockstep with the expansion we're seeing across town. And
that would be taxes, I suppose.
It would be, I think that there are some, I think really at this point it's just a forethought thing as well, and addressing the fact that the growth is going to happen. As I said earlier, however you feel about it, it's certainly going to happen. There's been growth across the student population, even without the 40Bs coming into play. The upside of the 40Bs is that we know they're coming. And so you can plan and prepare for a specific projected growth within the student population. I had an opportunity to speak with Dr. Alardi about that, and she has been, in my opinion, phenomenal about identifying and addressing the fact that this is going to be an issue. She's been trying to forecast for the growth in the student population, and really talk to all the stakeholders in the different schools and on the school committee, and make sure that everybody understands that we're not just going to take a wait and see approach. We need to plan and prepare for this to actually be happening. So, I think there's been some review of possible third site locations for the schools. That wasn't going to really be a logistically feasible option for them, and so
is that what they've?
That's my understanding.
I would think so too. I don't know where in the world it would be.
Not being on the school committee yet, I can't really speak to that definitively, but my understanding is that wasn't going to be cost effective, and it was going to be logistically difficult to implement. So that the expansion of the Freeman Kennedy School really seems like the most viable option at this point, which will also free up a lot of classroom space at the HOD to allow for the extra kindergarten classes that will be coming, and other classroom needs that are going to be happening. But obviously, in addition to that, you're going to need more staff, more paraprofessionals, more resources, more curriculum resources. It's not just a space thing, it's everything. So planning and preparing and taking a close look at the budget and seeing, what are the must-haves, what are the necessary things for a level services offering year over year, where can we try and be a little bit creative. I think
or waste in other parts of the town budget. Which I mean, I don't know what it might be, but I assume there must be, there might be, because, I mean, I don't know. It gets tough when you start to have to, make these, these. Now, what exactly does the school committee mostly deals with the budget?
The school committee has the purpose of, I think it's a dual purpose and involvement. There's a policy aspect to it, and a fiscal oversight and management policy to it. So in the budget, the budget is first approved by the school committee before it goes forward to the town meeting. That's pretty straightforward. And the policy aspect of things is more supporting and understanding and serving as a liaison, I think, into the community for things like updated curriculums, the strategic plans of the school system, which obviously encompass everything. You know, I mean, the most recently released strategic plan has goals for professional development, goals for, you know, social, emotional, and special educational needs, goals for academic achievement, goals for, you know, just communication with parents. It's a holistic, you know, what's the best course of action for the entire schools over the next 3-year strategic plan, and the school committee's involved, I believe, in the creation and implementation of that as well. And just understanding how, you know, different changes might be happening within the school. So, for example, you know, Dr. Alardi is going to be the one who really controls and dictates, I think, policy.
And personnel issues.
Personnel issues, things of that nature. But, you know, the school committee is, again, her first line of communication into the community for things like anti-bullying, or the fact that, you know, the school went to a new standards-based report card system, or the fact that they're updating ELA curriculum, or the new implementation of math curriculum that's going to happen next year. Just sort of understanding, you know, what's going on at school, why it's going on, the timelines for those things, and what the budget implications might be that are associated with them.
Now, what is this standard? Tell me, do you know anything about that standard-based report card?
Only from the standpoint of having received one for my child. Sure. No, it's. So they
don't use letter grades. Is that?
Well, we've never received a letter grade.
Really?
At Norfolk, you have to. My son is 9, so I don't know, you know, when that would normally have been utilized historically, either, you know, what the old standards would have been. But at the HOD, they would typically receive. I think what I have noticed to be the differentiating factor between the two report cards would be the ones we used to receive were a little bit shorter. So it was, you know, basic skills and functions mastering, you know, are they doing this frequently, sometimes, all the time, are they competent in this? The standards-based report cards, they give a number, like a numeric value to certain skills, but the skills that are being assessed, it's a broader kind of basket of skills. So some of those things might also just be, you know, verbal communication in the context of ELA, or, you know, within the separate math criteria that they're evaluating, a few, you know, sub-separate little things that they're evaluating as well. So you might overall be doing really well in math, but there's one part, you know, and the old report cards might not have captured that, I think. So it's designed to give you a broader idea of strengths and weaknesses and progress over the course of the year.
Because, you know, it's so there's always that element of I don't know, I don't want to say bias, but I know, I mean, I taught for a long time in the city of Boston, and it's, you know, what one teacher thinks is this, another one would think something else. I don't know if there's any way around it.
I can't.
You know,
speak. Yeah, I mean,
it got really complicated with a lot of, you know, different, what they call, I don't know what they call them, still strands, but, you know, to try to make all these more microscopic type of evaluations.
Right, and I'm sure at the elementary level it's hard too, because you're kind of building your student at that point too, right? You're building basic level skills, you know, where at the younger ages it's, you know, handwriting, basic math skills, you know, sentence structure, grammar, things like that. And then, you know, eventually you get to the point where it's all just based on the performance. You know, what did you get on the math test? What did you get on the chemistry test? What did you get on your history test? Things like that. So I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting process, definitely. I'll be interested to see, you know, having at this point had only one child moving through the school system, it'll be interesting when my daughter's in school next year to see how that experience, having a kindergartner, first grader, second grader, receiving the newer report card standards is different than when we had our son receiving those when he was moving through the same grades.
Have you attended many of the meetings, of the school committee meetings?
Not recently, and honestly, it's just a function of them being available online afterwards as well.
Oh, they are?
Yeah, you can usually, you can find videos of the school committee meetings.
Maybe we do them here. Maybe people from here come
I think it's similar to, I mean, you can find the ZBA meetings online as well, so it's a similar thing. I think they just set up a camera at I believe the committee meetings are typically held at the Freeman School, so they bring in cameras. When I have been to the committee meetings in the past, there've been
So you followed them
there.
in any case?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, this is an investment. We moved to Norfolk in 2007, in and around 2012, 2012, we sold the first house that we'd been living in, and we gave some consideration to, moving out of town. And we ultimately elected to stay, and the schools was, the quality of the education you were receiving from the local schools here was one of the big components there. And so, we're keeping an eye on our investment from my perspective.
Where did you live before you came here?
So we moved here in 2007. Prior to that, we were living in Walpole just for about a year right after my husband and I got married. And then prior to that, I spent all of law school, a year prior to being in law school, and then the first couple of years that I was out practicing, I lived in Cambridge.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So it's been a steady progression, kind of southerly and westerly into the suburbs.
Now, do you feel being an attorney is an advantage? Would be an advantage to the school committee to have an attorney on the school committee?
Well, that's a loaded question. I mean, people's opinions of attorneys are, wide and varied. But do I think it helps me as far as my candidacy? Sure. And some of that even just is a function of owning and operating my own practice. So I manage the budget for my business. I manage personnel for my business, benefits, client contracts, vendor contracts, and I understand the concept of, in a perfect world, this is what we would have and this is what we would be able to do with the budget. In reality, this is what we have and this is what we can do with the budget. Let's see where we can try and meet in the middle. Let's see where we can try and be creative, but let's always be realistic about the resources that we have and the expenses that we're going to have to plan and prepare for.
No, I just asked because you'd mentioned, and I don't know if the school committee handles these policies, like, for example, the bullying. And I would think somebody who's an attorney who knows the law might be able to bring something in terms of an analysis of how those programs be set up and, liabilities and that sort of thing.
Maybe slightly, but I think honestly, for any committee member, you have to view that function as being separate from what you may be doing professionally. I think that from a personality standpoint, sure, I would bring certain commentary into a discussion like that. But realistically, I think the committee makes decisions as a group, and they collaborate so closely with the school personnel and specifically with Dr. Alardi that it has to be a consensus decision about how you want to identify issues and implement logical solutions. I just meant,
I would think it would be good to have somebody who would have that kind of knowledge.
Sure, it never hurts. Yeah, it certainly. I don't think it would be an issue. It never hurts to have somebody who's bringing kind of real life experience to the table when they're having a conversation about policy implementation or legal implementation or whatever it is that you're looking at. But it is I even have to be on a personal level careful about how I separate my analysis of certain things and look at things from the lens of a committee member versus what I would do professionally or were I representing a board or a town or something like that.
So, what was your interest in being on the ZBA? I know you're an associate member, but what was your? Yeah, does it also had to do with this housing issue and the numbers and all of that?
It has a bit to do with just the growth and expansion and development of the town, the number of 40B projects that are pending, and honestly, it's a tremendous amount of work. And the ZBA positions are volunteer-appointed positions, and they are inundated right now.
I know.
With
I'm
applications
surprised.
and even the hearings they would normally be hearing, variances. I want to build a shed in the setback, or the standard run-of-the-mill things that they would have been handling up until 2 or 3 years ago, before all the 40B applications came in. It's a lot of work. They're committed. It's a great group of individuals who are on the board, and if I can help, why wouldn't I?
I know. I go to those meetings. I see them, and the aggravation level. It's, and I can understand why people maybe wouldn't want to run for a lot of these boards. When I first moved here, I think it was much less, let's say, democratic than it seems to be now. And I think people figure, well, if I'm going to get on this board, is it already all sewn up as to who's running it and who has the say and all of that thing? So, but I think it's, as I say, I think it's loosened up a little bit in that respect. Was there anything else that you wanted to add? We just have a few minutes.
No, I think we covered all of my major points as far as my campaign is concerned. So I absolutely, this is a phenomenal resource for the people in town. So thank you so much for doing it. I think this is great.
Are you planning any events or coffees or anything? I mean, of course, there's the Norfolk Community League. What night is that?
I want to say it's the week after. I believe it's the week after school vacation week, sometime during the week.
It's late in the month.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's
right
very close to the election, so I think that's helpful. Yeah, actually, I've been considering doing maybe a coffee or a meet and greet at either the Grange or the public library. And actually, myself and Jennifer Wynn, who's running for the, who's also running. Jen and I know each other very well, and we've been considering just having sort of an introductory meeting so people can meet the sort of new faces to the school committee race and have an opportunity to kind of speak to both of us in one shot rather than asking you to come out twice to two different locations. Everybody's busy, so
I can tell you who to call to arrange for the Grange.
Oh, fantastic! Wonderful. We'll talk about it afterwards.
Great. Does the bookings for the Grange?
Oh, fantastic! Wonderful. I'll have to get that information.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much. Oh, thank you.
And thank you for watching State and Local. This is my last guest, Medora Champagne. She's running for school committee, and the election is on May 1st, so please be sure and get out and vote. And we're very happy to offer this service for people to watch, to have these candidate interviews. So I wanted to thank everybody else that helps me out at Norfolk Public Access. And my name is Anne Marie Battistone, and this is State and Local. Thanks for watching.